Hi, I'm Dr. Harding. We have this video because we want to make sure everybody understands what we do and why you come to a chiropractor. Most people go to the chiropractor because of pain. And although pain is what brings you here, we want to make sure you understand where the pain's coming from and what we should be doing, okay? We won't accept your case unless we find what's called a subluxation. Subluxation is simply where a bone is out of alignment and therefore putting pressure on the spinal nerves that go between here. So if your vertebrae are aligned, the flow from your brain down your spine, out your spine to every tissue cell in your body and back flows properly and everything's good. If you have what we call a subluxation, where the bone's out of place, choking off the nerves or irritating the nerves, making it to where the brain can't send and receive the message it's supposed to be receiving, you got a problem. One of the last things to show up is pain. One of the first things to go away is pain. So pain is not a great barometer for if you should go to the chiropractor or not. We just want you to understand what we're trying to do. If you have these subluxations and the bone's choking off the brain's ability to communicate with the body can't function. Okay, you won't be accepted in our office unless you have a condition, what we call subluxation. Subluxation is simply where the bones are either out of alignment or not functional. See, the spinal cord comes down and the spinal nerves exit. Those nerves send and receive messages back and forth from the brain at 3 trillion bits per second in our life. If these bones are aligned perfectly and everything's functioning, everything's good. Your body's fine. You don't have a subluxation. We can't help you. If these bones are out of alignment, then all of a sudden the nerve is impinged, the body doesn't get the message back and forth, and one of the last things that'll show up is pain. Reason why pain's the last thing to show up in the condition is each one of these nerves has anywhere from 50 million to 200 million tracts going from brain to tissue cell and back. And again, only 9% of these nerves have anything to do with pain or pleasure. So when do these subluxations occur? Typically, the subluxation occurs 95% of the time. The research shows that babies have structural damage in their neck at childbirth. And here it is, a loving doctor doing nothing wrong, but has to pull the head and turn the head to get the shoulders out. The research says that asymptomatic babies that are totally healthy, that we think, have structural damage in their upper cervical spine. This structural damage has no way for the baby to tell you that there's a problem. And therefore, this baby may be slightly out of alignment like this, okay? And then the body adapts and says that's its new normal. The research shows if I give you a dime and put it on the back of your hand, you can test this. Lay your hand flat, put a dime on there, and see how long it takes for your body to adapt to that dime to where it doesn't feel the dime. You won't feel it any longer. If you move it, you'll feel it because your brain has what's called proprioceptors. It's all about detecting movement. But if the dime doesn't move, the body adapts to that, says it's a new normal. Same thing here. If the bone is subluxated, that hole that the spinal cord and the brainstem goes out of is choked off, and the brainstem now has a dime pressure on it. One dime pressure on the brainstem slows down the transmission of information from brain to body and back by 60%. That leads to kind of problems that like ADD and ADHD and colic and things that people think are just normal. But a lot of it is now brain damage. Not so much brain damage, but interference. Subluxations lead to choked off life. The body can't function the way it's supposed to function. So it happens first here, 95% of the time. Second is down here. When does this happen? Another trauma. Baby goes from a crawler to a walker. On average, a baby falls 37 times a day on their bum, anywhere from 2 weeks to 12 weeks, depending on their development. And some of the research shows that if they have damage here and interference to the brainstem, it takes longer for them to become a crawler and walker, so they fall even further. So now, by 1 year old, a child had a subluxation here, unless a loving chiropractor is there to check it, it's just the body adapts and adapts and adapts. And here's the dangerous part about this. The average person sees a chiropractor the first time when they're 46 years old. So these subluxations have been sitting there for 46 years and deteriorating, and the body again says that's its normal. The research shows that if I have a subluxation, if I have a bone go out of place, the ligaments and muscles that hold that bone have been damaged. And it takes about 14 weeks for that scar to build up and stabilize the joint. Well, unfortunately, when we have a subluxation, we have a flare-up of pain. People come in, they want to get an adjustment. What's their number one reason for being there? It's pain. What's their number one reason for getting the heck out of here? The pain goes away. I get that. But if we don't correct the problem, we adjust you, it's going to go back to its normal. We adjust you, it's going to go back to its normal. The more often we adjust you and your body adapts to its new normal, all of a sudden it's corrected. Now we have the flow of life, this innate intelligence that uses the brain and nerve system to control and coordinate all of our body starts to get messages back and forth. But it takes 14 weeks, multiple times a week for your body to adapt and correct the subluxation. Then the research shows you add 1 week for every year from the original injury. Say you were in a car accident, you had a whiplash trauma, and your spine was literally whiplashed. It affects the spine to where usually you lose the curve in the neck. And when we lose that curve in our neck, our body adapts and says this. Every time, whenever you lose the curve in your neck, it goes from here to here. They used to call that anterior head carriage. Now they call it tech neck, because most of our lifestyle is that we're doing this all day long. We have this whiplash trauma, we have this elongated neck. The research shows that when you lose that curve in your neck, it elongates the spinal cord by 6.5 centimeters, up to 6.5 centimeters. When that happens, it's putting a lot of tugging forces on the neck and upper back muscles. And so therefore, when we're doing this, we lose the tidal volume in our lungs. And so therefore, our lungs lose as much as 35% air volume when we're breathing. The cause of subluxations is the inability to adapt to stress. I think you'd all agree the world's a stressful place. There's 3 types of stress. There's physical trauma, like car accidents, childbirth, falling on your bottom, car accidents, sitting at a computer too long. That's physical trauma, okay? The second one is chemical trauma. Think about it. If you have a 3-year-old and your 3-year-old stays up too late with you because you were a bad parent, whatever, and you stayed up too late, you take them to daycare, you don't have time to get them a healthy meal, you take them to Quick Trip, and you get them a Monster and some Snickers and some ice cream. You have them gobble that up and say, hey, go to daycare and sit down and be quiet and do what the teacher tells you. That's not going to work. Why? Because they're in chemical stress. They're in fight or flight, and their body, their heart is racing. Their mind is racing. They're just got the jitters. And you can laugh about that's not going to work for a 3-year-old. What if mom and dad does the same thing? They have too much coffee. They have too much sugar. Yes, they can sit in their desk and not move, but they have the jitters. Their heart's racing. Their lungs are racing. Their blood sugar's sky high. Think about it. The 3 major causes there's 4 causes of death in the United States after 30. If you live over be 30, there's 90% chance we're all going to die of 4 causes. 1, heart disease. 2, cancer. 3, diabetes or stroke. They're lumped together. The 3rd leading cause of death, statistically, is adverse reactions to medications. Think about it. Adverse reactions to medications prescribed by your doctor or taken over the counter. What's the safest drug you can think of? Most people say Tylenol or ibuprofen. Tylenol is the number 1 cause of liver failure and kidney damage. And ibuprofen or aspirin is the number 1 cause of bleeding ulcers. So what we consider the safest drug in America, over 10,000 Americans die every year from taking those drugs. There's all kinds of an opioid epidemic going on in America because people who come in for our type problems go to the medical doctor, and the doctor's not doing anything wrong, but they give you anti-inflammatories, muscle relaxers, or opioids because it helps with the pain. But the problem is that pain is not going to move the bone from A back to B. It's just going to mask the effect, and the nerves, the pain sometimes will save your life. I know people don't like pain, but pain is there to alarm the system that there's a problem. And if we don't correct the problem, if we just mask the problem, it's kind of like if I'm driving my car down the road and the check engine light goes off. I have a choice to pull over and take it and get it corrected, or I can get some black spray paint and spray paint over the light. If I do that, the problem's only going to get worse. Same thing with drugs. Drugs save lives every day, don't get me wrong. But it's also the 3rd leading cause of death in the United States of America. So always ask your doc what we're taking it for and what's the end result for it. When are we going to get off this? What do I got to do to get off this medication? And when it comes to pain, the more we can align your spine, remove the interference, the body can get the message back and forth, you're going to feel better, you're going to heal better. Make sense? Okay, If we leave a subluxation, a bone out of place for a long period of time, here's healthy nerve. This is a disc that's been subluxated for a while. If it's been subluxated for a while, all of a sudden the disc starts to deteriorate. Over years, the bone spurs start to grow. We see people on x-rays with this type arthritic wear all the time. Many times, they'll come in with a lower back condition and an upper back condition. We take x-rays, and the areas that the worst arthritis is, they don't have pain. Why? Because only 9% of these little yellow nerves have anything to do with pain or pleasure. But most of the nerve flow is for movement. Most people have a lack of movement. They lose their posture. They can't hold their core. And all of a sudden they're slumped over. They can't breathe as well. And they just can't move. They don't have pain yet. Pain, again, is the last thing to show up. And the first thing to go away. Because if we just remove that interference and take that pressure back off and open up the nerve flow, the body functions. What's it going to do? It's going to go right back to square one where it was before. So we move it, and the body goes back. That's why it takes time and repetition. Here's the deal. If we leave these subluxations long term, arthritis is a bad thing. Everybody knows arthritis is a concern. More important to me is our internal organs. 9% of the nerves have a whole lot to do with pain or pleasure, and that's miserable. 70 to 80% of the nerves is for movement and lack of movement. That's why as we get older, we lose the movement. It hurts to move. But what we find is you wake up first in the morning and you're stiff and you're stove up, you can't move. But then as you start moving, by getting adjusted or just doing the stretches that we have our people do at home after the adjustments, you start feeling better because the brain is sending and receiving messages. Every time we move something, there's messages to the brain say, hey, I just moved. And it coordinates and secretes messages say, hey, continue moving or stop moving. And every time that interaction happens, there's hormones from our brain that are secreted. They're more powerful than the morphine that block the pain. So the more we get this movement, the better. The problem is a term called fight or flight. When we're stressed by chemical stress or emotional stress or physical trauma, then all of a sudden our body goes in fight or flight. Think about a dog. If a 20-pound dog is walking outside having a good time with his buddy and his owner, and all of a sudden 2 Rottweilers that are 125 pounds come towards him, what's the hair in his back going to do? It's going to crawl up. The tension in the spine. Why? Innately, this innate intelligence that uses the brainstem and the spinal cord knows innately that I've got to tighten up. Because if the bigger dog bites and gets muscle, he'll survive the event. If the bites and gets the spinal cord or the brainstem right up here, he's dead. He innately knows that. So as humans, same thing. We have the largest brain of any of the animals on the planet. If we're out in the woods and we hear something creaking around and we can't see it, our heart's going to race. That's an innate, intelligent procedure our body's going to do. Our body's going to say, why? Because I'm in fight or flight. If I think it's a bear going to come after me, my heart's going to start racing. My blood sugar's going to go sky high. My immune system's going to shut down. My digestive tract is going to shut down because I'm in fight or flight. Okay, that's great if a bear's chasing me, but it's not great chronically. So it's innate intelligence. If I hear or see a bear, my heart's going to start racing, my blood sugar is going to go sky high, my immune system is going to go down because all energy is on run or fight or flight. The subluxations, the bones go out of place, they couple together to protect, ready to fight. The problem is most of us have never been in a bear fight. We look and we say, oh, it was a squirrel. So now my hormones are all jacked up because I was in fight or flight. And I recognize it wasn't a bear, it's a squirrel. So what should I do? I should run because my body is chemically designed right now to run. And my body will never regulate until I go out and exercise. Think about our lifestyle. How many times we get stressed? None of us have been chased by a bear lately, I hope. But we do go out and we think about politics, we think about children, we think about our parents, we think about bills, we think about all these things, and they kick us in fight or flight. And then we eat things that are incongruent with the way we're supposed to eat, too much caffeine, too much sugar, too much fat, whatever it is. We don't sleep well, we watch television, we watch the internet, things we shouldn't be watching, even sports. If you watch a great football game and it stays up till 11 o'clock and they finish the game at an hour past your bedtime and they win the last play and it's awesome. But you can't go to sleep because you're wired because you're in fight or flight. So you got to kind of watch what goes on in here. Watch what goes on in here and what goes on in here. And watch what you read, what you see, what goes on in here. See no evil, hear no, you know the gig. The bottom line is whenever we see these stressors, it leads to these subluxations that have been sitting there dormant for a lifetime. And every time we stress out, it couples. When it couples, it locks. And when it locks, the brain can't send and receive messages. The research shows that when we adjust your upper cervical area, these top two vertebrae here, and we release that, turn the power back on, get the messages back for, all of a sudden the hormones in our brain, our prefrontal cortex of our brain, which allows us to make great decisions or poor decisions. And when we're stressed, we usually make poor decisions. And think about it, the prefrontal cortex is not even developed fully until you're 25. So we have a lot of kids and preteens and even young adults drinking and doing things that are not congruent with their lifestyle, and the prefrontal cortex, their decision-making process is not developed yet. And so therefore, they've been subluxated for a lifetime, their brain's not getting messages back and forth, and all of a sudden, they make these bad decisions, they get in a car accident, they play football, their head gets jammed, and now it's really locked up. And they have like concussion-like symptoms, even though they don't have a concussion, because of jamming or the cerebral spinal fluid doesn't go there. So a chiropractor lovingly gets the adjustment, we remove the interference, and all of a sudden the hormones, the thyroid kicks in, the brain kicks in, and we go chill. It denatures the stress hormones that our body creates under fight or flight. So adjustments help with fight or flight. Adjustments help with stress. Adjustments help with concentration and thinking process. It helps relax the body so our blood pressure, our blood sugar, and our hormones are improved. All that, and it also helps with pain. The bottom line is, I want you to be out of pain, but pain is sometimes your friend. And the research shows us now that at first, like I said, we have to give you adjustments multiple times a week for up to 14 weeks, depending on the person. Everybody responds differently depending on their lifestyle, their stressors, and how long the problem is and how badly damaged it is. Once it's safe to go from 3 times a week, we go to twice a week. When it's safe, we go down to once a week. When I was in school, we were taught that maintenance is once a month. The research now is very evident. There's this thing called immobilization and degeneration. You have to remember that big word, but basically, if the joint is coupled for 1 week, then the arthritic wear starts happening at the microscopic level. If it goes 2 weeks, now it affects the hormones that lead to cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. Because again, the brain is not sending and receiving messages the way it's supposed to receive. So it's vitally important that we get you out of crisis and we get you to maintenance. And then follow up with maintenance of once a week. I suggest once a week. Sometimes people can handle every other week. It's just, you know what? Most people aren't eating right. They aren't exercising right. They don't go out and do exercise every day like they're supposed to. They're thinking, they're not praying, they're not meditating the way they're supposed to pray and meditate. Their lifestyle is just so stressed. And so therefore the joint couples up. My deal is get you adjusted, do the homework between the adjustments, eat right, think right, move right, and stay in tune. Because the research, I don't know if you guys have ever been told, chiropractors used to be called quacks. This is what used to be called the Merritt Chart. Basically what it is, I don't know if you can see this, but each vertebra has different areas of the body that it powers on. The most important part is this. This is the head, and again, in real life there's not a string here, but right here in that hole, that's the canal this brainstem goes through. The brainstem is what controls and coordinates most of your autonomic nerve functions. This area where my fingers are is the most important part. It's kind of like the center of life. And if we can keep that opened up and that canal free, remember that dying pressure on there slows down the transmission by 60%. But also, the research shows, and we've seen it time and time in our office, that when people have these subluxations in the upper cervical spine, it can lead to headaches, nervousness, insomnia. They don't sleep well, high blood pressure, chronic dizziness, chronic tired, fatigue, multiple sclerosis, ADD, ADHD, all the stuff that people think are normal childhood. It's not normal childhood. It's subluxation of the atlas. Ear infections, anxiety, sinus problems, allergies, pain around the eyes, earaches, neuralgia, neuritis, all these things, people think, oh, that's just normal, that's normal. It's not normal, it's subluxation. And the only way to do it, no pain pill or no anti-inflammatory or no allergy medication is going to remove that interference, take pressure off that nerve system. We need to keep that clear as often as we can. If you go down from here, you're looking from basically here where the ribs start down to here, all the internal organs that keep us alive, like heart, esophagus, lungs, gallbladder, liver, all the way down here. Why is it that area? Because the ribs are protecting that area. It's vitally important. If you also notice this area of our body, we don't have a whole lot of movement. Most of the movement's in the neck and in the lower lumbar spine. This area has got to be protected because all the vital internal organs are protected here. We've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times that this area, if you have a subluxation, and now it's happening more and more between the shoulder blades, because why? People are living on computers and they're doing this for a long period of time, repetitive activities, and so therefore the tightness between the shoulder blades leads to stomach problems, leads to heart disease, leads to liver problems and lung problems, because we're not getting brain to message to the in tissue. Remember, every cell recreates itself. In 1 second, you have over 2 million cells being recreated. If the nerve flow is proper and this innate intelligence is getting messages back and forth, it works well. But if there's a nerve interference and it's not getting messages back and forth, it heals itself with dis-ease. And eventually the cell will become diseased, okay? This chart is so important because back in the 1920s, they did research. They thought chiropractors were quacks. And that these guys are saying they can heal everybody. The bottom line is chiropractors don't heal anybody of anything. We detect the subluxation, we move and correct the subluxation, and then the body heals itself. That's the innate intelligence within us. It does the healing. I move the bones, Dr. Loew moves the bones, God does the healing. Innate intelligence does the healing. But if we have interference in any of these areas and leave it there long enough, those tissues don't function well. When they were trying to discredit chiropractic way back in the 1920s, what they did is they found they got a lot of people who were dead, cadavers, and they went and they wanted to see if it actually worked. So they had medical doctors, friends, who would not know why the cadaver died, why the person died, and they would just go in and feel the vertebra and find out which area was most stuck, or what we would call subluxated. And they said, well, if those quacks are right, and this guy died of say, for example, gallbladder, it would be right if his T4 was most subluxated. So they went and looked and they just felt which one was most stuck or arthritic, like we showed in here. So what astounded them was they had over 100 students, over 100 cadavers, and they were 100% accurate. When they found the one that was most stuck, that was what the condition they died from. So this chart shows the nerve flow to each and every of these tissue cells, and kind of what they tried to discredit chiropractic actually reinforced chiropractic. And again, most chiropractors don't even go by this chart. Most chiropractors are into back pain, neck pain, the stuff the insurance carries and covers. The bottom line, your insurance company doesn't carry or cover you or care about you. They care about the bottom line. We accept all cases, regardless of condition, regardless of ability to pay. The only thing we have is if you have a subluxation, you're a chiropractic case. If you don't have a subluxation, there's nothing we can do. We can't help you because that's all we do. Detect the subluxation, correct the subluxation, give you advice of what to do at home, make sure you do all the stuff you can at home to make sure that the subluxation holds as long as it possibly can. And if your lifestyle is congruent, your body lasts longer. If your lifestyle is not, you're going to need more care. And we're not a cure-all. We're not going to cure you of anything. We're just going to remove interference so your body can function better. If you have any questions, call. If you've not been to our office, come in, we'll check you, make sure you do have a subluxation. If you have it, we'll accept your case. Bring your children. Every man, every woman, every child needs a clear, healthy nerve system. Thanks for your time.